Talk this.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I'm your playing podcast games like it's my job host, Madelyn.
I'm your just playing some games like it's my job host, Emma.
And thanks for tuning into the show. This week, it's that time of the 6 weeks again, that time where we talk to you about what we've been playing the past 3 fortnights. Speaking of which, did you hear about the Epic Apple trial? They did not rule on what a game is, or whether naked bananas are obscene. And I won't make Emma tell the bad jokes that she told me about it, but just know that she told them.
It's a win for everyone. It's a win for everyone who wanted both companies to lose. So,
huzzah!
And
Huzzah.
I'm sure there will be an appeal, and we'll get to have comical tweets to follow again. So,
appeal with the banana.
Yes, exactly. Peely will be appealing.
Yes. An appealy.
Yes.
He'll show up in a business suit this time.
I hope so. I hope they make, like, a specific Peely for the lawsuit, like, as a marketing tool. Like, lawyer Peely.
In that episode, didn't I propose adding the judge to Super Smash? Wasn't that, like, on the table?
Yeah.
I feel like a Peely dressed as a judge is a good compromise. When that was my original idea.
All right.
Anyway, enough about something that is about... I did not play any games made by either Epic or by Apple, whatever that would mean, in these past 6 weeks. So, Emma, it's time for the count up, so we decide who's going first. How many games did you play this
8.
July-August time? Did I say
8.
July-August? This August-September. 8 games? Okay, you definitely have to start.
How many games do you have?
5. And some of them are
right,
short.
then.
So you get to go in.
Some of these are short, so.
Well, here we go. In the leadoff position. Emma, what have you been playing?
Well, I finished Neo The World Ends With You in about, like, the 2 days after our last 6-week podcast, probably. Everything I said about it in that show, I assume stands. To be honest, I don't remember what I said about it specifically. But I assume my feelings haven't changed particularly. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad that they got to make another. It is not quite up there with the original for me. I think that mostly, I did read a piece on it. I think it was from Gita Jackson at Vice. Like saying that in contrast to the original, which is mostly about like forming bonds on an individual level, this one was about like a community, like being part of a community, like living in a place and like, you know, learning the people that live there even a little bit. And that made some of the decisions make a little bit more sense to me in the game. But ultimately it just doesn't feel as effective because there are so many characters. Like, I'm pretty sure in the first game, every single, like, important character, including the ones that you have, like, little side stories with, are introduced in the first week. Like, with maybe the exception of Joshua, but technically he does appear on the first day, so it counts. In Neo Toy, you're still meeting major characters in the third week, and I think that's the main problem for me.
That's tough. It's got to be tough to build relationships with meaningful characters if they're entering in the final act.
Yeah. Yeah, it creates this feeling that, like, oh, this character's just here for plot reasons. Even though they're fun and well-designed and well-performed and everything. And I think by having so many characters, despite thinking that, like, the main group is pretty great, they just don't have enough time to go through arcs in the way that, like, Neku, Beat, and Shiki did in the first game, I think.
That's wild, because isn't this game, like, twice as long? 3 times as long.
Well, there's so many more characters.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So, of course, it's longer.
But no, it's just interesting. It's like you're well, who knows? I'm gonna say you're right to point out, but it makes sense to point out the strong arcs of the characters in the original game. But there's probably as many. Well, who knows? There's some change in the number of hours per character that scales up reasonably, and it's interesting that scaling that up doesn't always scale up kind of proportionately.
Yeah. I also, and I guess this is a little bit of a spoiler for you, but I won't go too far into it, but like, all the marketing was like, Sho Minamoto is in your party, he's a major character, and he goes away after the first week and just kind of stops existing as a character until the end, which was very disappointing to me, honestly. Like, when they said that he was coming back in, like, the early marketing, I was like, that's a great idea. He's, like, an interesting character who didn't really have much of an arc in the first one. But he's fun, and I would like to spend more time with him, and maybe this is a chance to give him an arc. But no, he's just there, being mathy. So I thought that was a missed opportunity as well.
Emma wanted a major arc, or at least a minor arc, but... I was just
upset that he wasn't in my party through that the whole
flat
game.
line. I was trying to make I was working toward a math jokes there.
Anyway, that's Neo. It's wowie for me. But I do recommend it. It's fun. It will probably not make a ton of sense to you if you haven't played the first one. Because they do drop some names, like they will mean something to you, and they will not unless you've played the first one. So...
Well, that's Nomura for you.
Like, the whole composer concept does not get explained in this game, and yet they talk about it, and it's like, well, you would be lost if, Well,
you should have read the plot summary in the booklet in the front of the game box.
I don't think that's there anymore.
What are you talking about? It's a sequel to The World Ends With You. How long could that possibly have taken to come out? Like 3 years? Speaking of which, I'll piggyback on that. In preparation to, at some point, play Neo, my boyfriend and I went back. We had actually already played through this. I really had thought that there was something that we were missing, but the thing we had not played through all of was getting all of the secret reports and the tin pin day.
Yeah, the another day.
Which I am just not. I'm so bad at Tin Pin Slammer. Anyway, folks, I'm talking about The World Ends With You final remix here. Yeah, I'm terrifically bad at Tin Pin. I don't understand how I am so bad.
It's a lot easier with a touchscreen.
I bet. But
yeah.
That's not how we play on the Switch here.
Yes.
So we played through the new scenario just to get up to speed for the upcoming, or the now Emma finished, the now released sequel. And it was, that character, the neon girl, is still sort of weird and annoying. I'm sure she's back in Neo.
Yeah.
Every time I see her...
I still find that scenario weird even after finishing Neo, so... There's that.
It's interesting the way they introduce the idea of, that they introduce that there's any place outside of Shibuya, I guess. But also kind of the idea, it starts to introduce the idea of these like this community idea. Just barely. It's a weird way to do it, I'm not gonna lie. It doesn't make a lot of sense, I'm not gonna lie. If you're telling me that it doesn't link up very well with the Neo game, I'm going to continue to speculate wildly about it linking up with Kingdom Hearts.
It does get addressed in Neo. It just is not very much part of the main plot, so it feels like they made it and then they were like, actually, we don't really want to follow this through. So
and I suppose that's fine. But yeah, I mean, it continued to be fun. The theme of this week is going to be a lot of local co-op or turned into cooperative games on my end. And it was certainly an adjustment, kind of jumping back into the mechanics of it all. We had a very hard time with the final boss fight. Look, I had turned my level pretty far down, but there's no way to fix that.
That boss fight is just it. I remember it took me so long. I didn't even die. It just took a long time.
Well, I would just get murdered. Like, it was just really hard, and I didn't remember what pins were good or how to use them, and it was just a lot. And I didn't even remember that it was, like, the final boss when we were doing it, because I didn't remember the scenario that well. So we died, like, one hit away, and we were like, okay, we're done for the night, one of the nights we were playing. And then, of course, we finished it the next day, and we were like, oh, okay, I guess that's it. So it was definitely weird pacing to kind of pick up with this short little extra scenario. But the tunes are bopping, so Isn't that what really matters? So yeah, I don't have a lot to say about that because I only played a couple hours and it was at the beginning of this round of games. But the original game is still good, and it's, I think, probably even better if you're playing it with a partner, just because I can imagine this would be a lot to handle trying to do on your own. I don't know. You played it on your own. You can talk to me about that. But it's helpful to have a partner who is undamageable and can just jump around killing the enemies for you.
Yeah.
So that's the TWOWY segment of this week's episode, I suppose.
Yeah. I guess I will do a couple of my short ones. I tried the Tales of Arise demo. Because they released, like, a little, very short little demo segment where you can, like, try out all the characters and, you know, try out the combat and stuff. And I really like this. I don't know if I'm just paying more attention or if more games are releasing demos, but either way, I appreciate it. Because this one, if the Scarlet Nexus demo, you know, talked me into buying this game, this one talked me into waiting until it's on sale. The Tales games are never, like, my favorite games, but I always enjoy them. You know, they're good, like, sort of comfort food games. But the main two things I really like about them is that they feature co-op. And there's sort of, like, this weird niche segment of co-op where it's, like, if you came over and I was like, I want to play my game right now, I could, like, hand you a controller and you could, like, play my game with me. Yeah. You know? And that's a very niche segment. So I understand why Tales of Arise does not have it anymore, but it still makes me sad. And then there's the skit system, where, like, you're walking around and there'll be, like, a triangle prompt you can press, and your characters will have, like, a little funny conversation together. And prior to Arise, these were always done with 2D sprites, right? Like, drawings of the characters.
I kind of remember this from whatever, I can't remember which Tales game I played, you know.
You don't remember the skits?
I remember the skits. I'm saying I don't remember which game is the one that I have played. But
Zillia,
yes,
I think.
The skits I remember being very fun.
Yes, I really like that. In Arise, they still have skits, but they're done with the 3D models. Okay. And they're so lifeless. Like, the models are better than any previous game, but they just do not have a range of expression that makes those skits fun. In that I started to skip voice lines in some of the skits because I was like, okay, whatever. I mean, part of it is because I don't know who these characters are yet, so who cares? But yeah, I really didn't like them with the 3D models. It made me sad. And so without those two features there, it feels a lot more just like this generic thing without the, like, little quirks that make the Tales series enjoyable. So, I mean, it got great reviews, so I'll probably pick it up eventually. I also think the battle UI is insultingly terrible.
Tell it like it is.
Like, your HP, your player character, is, like, above your character. So not with the other characters. And there's no face portrait on, like, the health bars. There's just the name in tiny font. And it's like, how do you expect me to read this? I and I kept looking over at the other HP bars to check mine, but it's above my character. So I'd be like, I'm fine. And then I would be dead. And I was like, what happened? It's like, oh, that's not where my health was. I wasn't checking my health. So yeah, I genuinely think the battle UI is just, like, awful. And that's my other main complaint. But anyway, I'll probably pick that up eventually when it's on sale. One other short one I got for one Saturday, Aerial Knight's Never Yield, which is like a side-scrolling runner game. It reminded me a little bit of like Sayonara Wild Hearts, and then it's like running to music, but it's just side-scrolling, and it's not quite as stylish, and it doesn't have Queen Latifah. So
what's the point then?
But if you're looking for something like that, I can recommend it. It was fun. I tried out some of the harder levels, with like less slowdown before obstacles, and that was fun too. Although I probably won't go back to it. I'll also just say that if you're going to play it, you should try to get some like attachments that don't have vibration, because oh my god, the vibration is way too intense on it. And there's no way to turn it off in the game. So I had to switch my Joy-Cons to the ones, like the ergonomic ones that don't have the vibration function, just so I could continue to play this game.
See, it's the thing we lost when we moved from the very first DualShock, right? We used to have that button. No, that was analog. I feel like there may have been a vibration button too, though.
Might have. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, the vibration was genuinely terrible. So I usually like vibration. I'm usually like, yeah, it's vibrating. But this was like, wow, my hands are dead now. So that's another short one. As we can pass back to you.
I'll jump back in. I realized last time that I forgot to talk about this. So I'm going to talk about it here again, even though it is technically outside of the 6 weeks. But we finished It Takes Two here.
Oh, cool.
I enjoyed It Takes Two, which, if you don't remember from the show a couple months ago, is a two-person co-op required game about a couple that's getting a divorce that gets turned into dolls and has to navigate the world to get back to their daughter, who spends a lot of time looking at her comatose parents' bodies in the game. So I enjoyed this game way more than I thought I would. Especially given I just feel like all the press around it was like, the divorce, they're getting divorced. And while that is certainly, like, that is very much in some ways core to the story, it's not like, it's light enough throughout and mostly just them like bickering throughout that it's not quite as, don't believe all the hype that it's this like bizarro divorce game. That's not, I think that sells it in a way that is not a good way to sell this particular game. It's really kind of more like, what I really enjoyed about it was that it was really more like kind of 12, like 2-hour games. That's more than it was, like 8 2-hour games in one, because they're constantly moving from different biomes and kind of different fantastical areas. And then in each of those, you have the kind of different mechanics to it. Nothing about it was especially challenging. Some of the boss fights were not exactly, I wouldn't even say they rise to the level of frustrating. Just like, this game was not really super designed for this in some of these situations, and it didn't work awesome. But it was fun, and playing the kind of mini games within this almost mini game structured game was fun. I crushed Josh at chess, which was good.
Good.
You know, of course, we played where I was the girl and he was the boy, because that's required.
Yeah.
I do have to say, no spoilers, that I found the ending to be a little bit underwhelming. The very last world was cool. Like, there was a lot of cool elements to it. There was actually some kind of Sayonara Wild Hearts elements to it, in that the last one is kind of about like a music concert thing. I'll say that one of the characters having a musical background and wanted to get back to that from the character's kind of current job it came a little out of nowhere and seemed a little bit... Okay, whatever. I'll spoil. The mom is like an engineer or something now, but apparently at some point wanted to be a singer. And look, I'm not over here to diss the arts, right? Like, get into the arts, people. But I did feel a little bit like, well, that's a bummer that we have this really successful science mom and we can't have like a final world that's about her being a dope engineer. Instead, it's about this thing about her that we've never heard of at all before. The husband was like, he wants to get back into gardening, which I was like, okay, sure. Like, stay at home dad, like, fine, sure. That I can buy. But I felt like the music thing kind of came out of nowhere. And, well, that final world was quite good. Look, this is about to be very on-brand Madelyn, right? But I really wanted a boss rush at the end, by which I mean not literally a boss rush, but I wanted something that was going to have me kind of go back through the things I had done throughout the game in kind of one final... I'm such a sucker for that, right? So, like, I'll admit that. But I would have liked something that felt a little bit more climactic, and the final beats of the game, especially given that the story element of it, well, kind of fun moment to moment, I was not especially invested in as a major arc for the characters here. It was just a little bit like, I'm at the end of the game. I wanted something to kind of mark the end of the game for me in a little bit more grand style. Also, it then ends with a cutscene with everyone as people again, and the people animations are bad.
Well, yeah.
Which is okay. That's not, like, most of the game isn't that. But to have the kind of final emotional thing happening where everyone is people, it's like, oh, but they are so weird looking. Again, it was fine. It's not like, this is coming from the place of I was not emotionally invested in this story. And let's be honest, like the story is going where you think it's going, right? Mm-hmm. It's like the living people models are not awesome. And also the daughter is going to need some therapy because her parents were like dead on the couch and at their desk for an indeterminate amount of time. Also, we talked on the show about how they have to murder her stuffed elephant. It really is that bad. They really do murder it. Clickbait Boyfriend had not been spoiled on that and was like duly appalled at what was happening. So if you're sensitive to toy murder, be aware of that entering this game.
Traumatized by Toy Story 3, right?
Yeah. But overall, it was really fun, and I don't think that it would be weird to play with someone who wasn't a significant other, if that makes sense. The divorced couple, and like you as a couple element of the story is so light and mostly played for laughs that if you have been on the fence about this because you're like, it's gonna be weird for me to play this with my roommate. We're both dudes and we love football. Like, if that's been you and you're interested in this game, but you've been feeling like it's weird, it won't be. The divorce element of it is kind of eye-rolly mostly, and you do not have to romance each other.
Good.
So that's It Takes Two. Really, I would recommend it. I was on the fence about buying it for the show, but I'm glad I did. I had a good time.
Good.
Back over to you.
There's the birdie meme that's like, I'm once again asking you. And then there's like the alteration that's like, I'm no longer asking. Right? That's me to you about Kentucky Brute Zero. Okay.
Are you saying to me, or are you saying to the broad you?
Well, the broad you, but also you. I don't know if you'll love it, but I think you'll find it really interesting. From your theater background. So I do strongly recommend it to you specifically, and you general.
I'm intrigued.
I finished it up this 6 weeks, and yeah, it was great. I know. It's sort of hard to talk about, but I mean, I wish more games would pull so unapologetically from, like, theater, at least aesthetics, like presentation, I guess.
So you're saying you want all games to have 27-year-old Ben Platt in the teenage lead?
Yeah. No, not quite like that. I just mean it would be interesting. You know, a lot of games pull from movies and TV for the way that they're directed and stuff. And I'm not saying that's inherently bad, right? But it would be interesting to see more games pull from theater, because honestly, I think games in theater have maybe more in common than games in movies.
I'd like to see more theater pull from games.
Yeah. Mutual beneficial relationship here. Yeah.
You betcha.
Yeah, so I don't know when's the last time I talked about Kentucky Route Zero or like what it's about. But it's an adventure game. So like a point and click adventure game where you're a bunch of different characters and you're walking around and you're choosing dialogue and interacting with the environment and stuff. But there's not puzzles in the sense of like, you know, like LucasArts adventure games. Basically, you know, you start as this guy, Conway. He has one last antique delivery to make to 5 Dogwood Drive, but he doesn't know how to get there. And people tell him he needs to take the 0 with funny font. The 0 in ominously moving font. And he ends up, you know, meeting all these different people and going on this sort of magical realism trip down a mysterious highway and then eventually a river. I thought so, you know, you start as Conway, but you end up taking control of, like, almost every character that you meet, and oftentimes more than one character in a single conversation. So, rather than necessarily, like, you know, choosing the course of the story or whatever, you're more like co-writing or co-directing a sort of scene, I guess. In that, you know, all the things that you can say are true, but which way is this character being, you know, portrayed or is expressing themselves, you know? Which is sort of weird sometimes. There's one sort of subplot going on where a couple of you run into a couple of musicians who are also androids.
Sure.
And you also run into a little boy with a huge bird for a brother. And the musicians start talking about whether they want to bring this little boy along with them, like on their music act. And it's a little weird because you choose for both these musicians and the kid, and I felt like, oh man, like do they want this? Does the kid want this? You know, and you're put in charge of all of those decisions, and it's sort of this uncomfortable experience of doing it, I guess, in a way that's hard to describe. Yeah, but it's very good. I really, really am glad that I got back to playing it.
That is interesting in its theatricality. I mean, it sounds in many ways that kind of well, it's interesting in light of our discussion on character identification as well, right? This almost forcing you either to, like, weirdly over-identify, right? Where you're, like, identifying with everyone and putting yourself in everyone, or to intentionally distance you, where you're more aware that you're playing a game and that you're in control here than you usually are, which is interesting and very, like, Brechtian, kind of, in its focus there. That's cool. I have it on Steam. I don't know, man.
I am no
Someday.
longer asking.
Do you think Bernie Sanders has played Kentucky Route Zero?
He should. It's all about how debt in America makes life awful for everybody. So I think you'd like it.
Bernie, if you're out there, if you're listening, happy belated, man. And also, do we have a rec for you?
All right, back to you. What's your next game?
So my game I think that I spent the most time on this past 6 weeks is I played all of Murder by Numbers. I finished it well, it's noon, right? I finished it today, for the podcast.
Nice.
And as I said on our episode on that show, Picross is pretty good. Pretty fun. I do see what many of the reviews were talking about in that, like, yeah, the pacing of this particular game can sometimes get a little bit weird in that you are taking 15 to 20 minutes out at a time to just put the Picross together. But I was kind of wondering throughout, so we never had to use a hint. I mean, humble brag, right? Am I right? But I have never done this before, and while the puzzles at the end in kind of the last case were quite challenging, we were never stuck for more than a couple minutes at a time figuring something out. And so I wonder then how easy this game is for people who aren't total newbies to Picross and have their kind of, like by the end, right, I was getting a lot better at picking out what combinations of numbers meant I could just fill in a whole row or a whole column, right? So I was kind of wondering, like, if you're a Picross junkie, like, did you just fly through this game? Was this game a total joke? Or how good about myself should I feel that I did well on the puzzles? But the story is fun. The characters are likable. There's a light setup for a sequel potentially at the end, so I'd be happy to see a sequel. Those are fun characters. Also, the music was on constant kind of boop, 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 kind of singing along in our home for the past several weeks.
That's how you know it's good.
I started playing this game thinking that I would be playing it by myself because I was like, I don't know, it's like just like puzzles and like a silly story. This doesn't feel naturally like a game that I will play like cooperatively. And also it was a game I like played one of it when I was taking the train somewhere, and I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, I get why you'd want to play Picross on a commute because it was engaging and it made that train ride go much faster. But as soon as Josh heard the music, he was like, that's a banger. What song is that? Like, this music slaps. And that was it. From that point on, like 2/3 of the way through the first case, we played it kind of as a duo game. The music does slap, but I was sort of taken aback because when I was playing, I was like, oh, the music's good. But yeah, there's been a lot of just kind of like breaking out into that song. Not even the vocal one, just the instrumental.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I would definitely, if you're into Picross, I would recommend getting this. It's a lot of Picross, I guess is what I'll say. The story is fun. I can't imagine this being fun if you don't enjoy the puzzles.
Yeah.
Like, some of the reviews were like, oh, it's okay, like, you can use the hint system. It's like, yeah, you can, but the detective element of it is not, or the detective story element of it is not so interesting or unpredictable or something like that I think it would be very engaging if you weren't enjoying the primary gameplay element. There's not really that much strategy to the conversations that you have with people or anything like that. I also would have liked, so overall I really like this game, but if I were gonna make some tweaks, I would have loved to have seen more fun things going on with the level of difficulty of various puzzles. Pretty much the game more or less on a perfect linear upward slope in difficulty as we went along. So in the first couple of cases, that meant the puzzles got bigger and bigger as you went. But they did pretty much level off at 15 by 15 almost all of the time by the time you got to the third case. And from there, they definitely continue to get more challenging, and you close with a 15 by 20, which actually weirdly was not nearly as hard as some of the ones that came right before it. Just because of how it was set up. But I would have liked to have seen some fun things going on with how difficult is this for Scout to scan. As a recap, if you missed that episode, you're playing as former television detective turned real detective, although you don't have a license. Why are the cops letting you do this? Whatever. Honor. And you've found this mysterious robot Scout, and the game follows you solving some murders and also learning some things about Scout's past. So, what was I saying? Yeah, I would have liked to have seen, so like, for example, in the final case, this is not really a spoiler, at some point somebody asks you to pick up their toolbox for them. It's like in your apartment. And that to me, I was like, oh, that will be very easy to find. Right? There's nothing about, like, I will look around the apartment and I will see the toolbox. And I thought there could have been an interesting moment of humor there of giving me a just very easy Picross puzzle to solve at that moment. And so I would have liked, in a game that had a lot of kind of humor and a lot of tongue-in-cheek stuff and just silliness, I would have loved to see that silliness extend a little more into the number games. Not too much or anything, but I think there was an opportunity there potentially to do something a little bit more tied in to what you were scanning for with those puzzles sometimes. But yeah. I also would have liked to see more bad things happen to Honor's ex-husband, but maybe if they make a sequel. Probably no chance of a sequel now, though, right? I mean, Fall Guys was so huge.
Fall Guys is so huge they can maybe afford to, expand, and then they can have a team working on other stuff,
I guess that's true.
So there's both sides to that, right? Fall Guys' success means that they can do more things, but it also means they have to dedicate time to Fall Guys. So
it also means they're gonna have to look like Fall Guys.
It's true.
So yeah, another qualified recommend. If you are someone who enjoys Sudoku or crosswords or that kind of thing, you will probably enjoy this game. If you are someone coming to it from the perspective of, I like Ace Attorney, you will probably need to like those puzzles to enjoy this game. That said, this probably means I should probably actually play Ace Attorney, right? I've had the first games collection since I impulse bought them in like March 2020.
There is no Picross in Ace Attorney.
Well, I know that. But the music.
Yeah.
Because we just need to be bopping around to the music here.
This is where I would say, speaking of Ace Attorney, but I want to talk about the great Ace Attorney last. So
speaking of Ace Attorney, Emma played that. Stay tuned.
Yeah. So anyway, I also, speaking of games that came out on or around my birthday, I started getting into Nier Reincarnation, which is the mobile gacha game for Nier. They gacha me.
Finally, Emma's real life gacha obsession comes to the virtual space.
Truly. So Nier Reincarnation is a mobile gacha game. You're a little girl with this strange ghost creature named Mama.
Of course.
And you're traversing through this area called the Cage, which is just like this big labyrinthine structure with a bunch of different biomes that you're walking through. And basically the setup of each sort of level is that you're like going through weapon stories to like return things to this girl. Like emotions and stuff that she doesn't have. So like weapon stories has been like a side part of the Nier and Drakengard series, I think since its inception, basically. And so this sort of like takes the idea of the weapon story and like puts a game around it. So each sort of weapon that you get has different parts of the story with a different character attached to that weapon. And some of these characters' stories intersect, and some of them don't. And some of them appear to be Nier lore relevant, and some of them don't. And like of the, I guess like 11 characters so far, there's a whole like 3 or 4 that don't have white hair, so you know it's a Nier game. They've all got the white hair.
Goodness.
But I'm having pretty good. I'm having fun with it. They are really racing through stuff on the global release right now. I'm assuming because they want to catch up to where the Japanese release is. So they're one main story chapter behind Japan right now, and apparently chapter 12 finishes this arc, and then chapter 13 is going to start a new arc in the story. So my guess is they want to get caught up before that releases so that they can do it, if not simultaneously, then at least close together. Because they're just like, here's like 4 events at once, folks. Enjoy your grinding. But it is pretty friendly in terms of like giving you lots of stamina, giving you lots of ways to increase stamina. There's some ways you can like grind with it on in the background if you want to get like, enhancement equipment. And it's pretty generous with its premium currency. I bought the Jumpstart pack. But other than that, I have not spent any money on it. And,
other than the money I spent on it, I have not spent any money on it.
I bought the Jumpstart pack, which is like their deal for like the first like 48 hours you're playing the game. Because I figured it's free. I'm going to be playing it a decent amount. I can give them a little bit of money. I'm lucky enough that that's how they get you, but I don't feel like I'm addicted to it, so I'm not too worried about giving them like a little bit of money to be like, I appreciate your game, because I don't think I will fall into the hole. And if I do, I will text you and it'll be like, Emma, delete it off your phone immediately. Okay, you gotta promise. All of you.
I can't wait to send this audio clip to your, like, the therapy
putting it here for posterity. But yeah, I got some characters that I think are cool. They're leveled up. I've cleared all the main story quests, and now there's just like some side content to do. So, I'm just doing that. And yeah, it's very well made for a mobile game. I mean, there's a lot of mobile games that are very well made for a mobile game now, I guess. But I find it really fun to check in a couple times a day and level up my characters and, do some quests and stuff like that. And the character designs and the music are both great, and vaguely horny sometimes. Not the music, the character designs. The music isn't particularly horny, to be honest. But as is the staple of the Nier franchise.
Gotta have some butts.
Yep, it's plenty of butts. Don't worry, you will get your butts if that's what you're here for.
That's the episode title. Is this the first mobile game you've been consistently into since the Avengers Academy days, or has there been anything else?
I tried out Sino Alice, which was the other Yoko Taro project thing that he did some work on, or made. I don't know what his involvement with it anymore is. But I find this more compelling than I did Sino Alice. I think the stories feel more substantial, and just sort of the way it's set up is feels more friendly to like my time and money than Sino Alice did. So yeah.
Well, send a little more money for the helmet fund, the big mask fund, the puppet fund. Mm-hmm. I don't have that much else interesting. I have 2 other games, but they're not especially interesting. I imagine you're going to talk about Chicory at some point, so I'll tag that on to yours. My other game, and speaking of things that you were borderline addicted to, remember when I mentioned 6 weeks ago playing some Katamari? Kind of unwind, casual game?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. We played so much Katamari. We played very, very much Katamari. these, not fortunately, it's not something that I've brought to the new Talk This NYC HQ. I've not fired it up since moving, but we played a lot of Katamari in August. Katamari is so good. I am demanding a remake of We Love Katamari. Really, I want to.
You say that every single time you talk about Katamari.
I know it's too much to ask for a new one, so I have to ask for what I can get.
Yeah.
It really makes me glad to have your PS3. Thanks, Emma, because Katamari Forever is so fun, and it's nice to not just have the original, which you could get with reroll on current systems. Katamari Forever is dope. We spent so much time like trying to get 100 points on levels. I got much better at Katamari. We still did not get the biggest cow bear, though, in the cow bear level, despite like my boyfriend trying many, many, many times. So yeah, I just think, I probably say this every time too, but I wish that there was a real world Katamari that I could play during a stressful time.
I feel like I say this every time too, but I think it would be horrifying.
You're right, but I don't care. I also saw one of the Japanese dogs I follow on Instagram use the word Katamari like literally as the word, and that was also a highlight of the past 6 weeks. Anyway, sounds truly, good. If you haven't played Katamari, it's on Game Pass now. What are you doing? What are you doing?
What are you doing? You don't have an Xbox, probably.
Well, then it's on Switch. It's on every system. You
can't
get
Game Pass on every system.
I know Game Pass isn't on every system. I'm not an idiot. When should I cave and get a new gaming system? And should I get an Xbox?
When they're available.
When should I start trying to pay you to get me one?
Whenever. You can pay me whenever. I'm waiting for when my game fund from work rolls over. I might try to get a 1S next year.
Wow, you're really going in.
Yeah. The 1S is just so appealing to me. Or Series S, sorry. Whatever it's called. The little one. The little new one.
Wii Xbox.
Yes.
Lil X.
The Lil X. That's
Lil
what they
Nas
should have
X box. No, we'll have to get a PlayStation because there's a person in this household invested in Horizon Zero Dawn and like God of War. So we will have to get a PlayStation.
Yeah, I think Horizon Zero Dawn is coming to PS4. Although how well it will run is a question. I don't know about the new God of War. Alright, I'll talk about one game and then Chicory, and then you can talk about Chicory, and then I'll do Ace Attorney.
Thanks for the programming note. Go on.
Yeah. So I've been playing Chris Tales, which is this indie love letter to JRPGs, it's called. It's not made in Japan. I can't remember which country it is, but I think it's a South American team. And you play as a girl named Crisbell. Of course you do. Crisbell. Chris Tales. Crystals. Do you get it?
I got it now.
Okay. And she's living in an orphanage, but one day she goes into the cathedral when she's not supposed to, and she, because she's chasing a frog in a top hat, as you do, as a JRPG protagonist.
I
and
would
she gains
chase a frog
ability.
in a top hat if I saw one, to be clear.
Yeah,
like,
true.
Tell me you wouldn't chase that if you saw
I would, you're right, I would. She gains the ability to see into the past and the future and the present, like, all at once, right? Which is visualized with this cool effect where, like, it's like these triangles, and, like, the left side of the screen is like the past, and then there's the present in the middle, and then the right side of the screen is the future when you're in cities. And so she like has to go around like learning how to use these powers, and also because of them she sees that, you know, like ruin is coming to her city, and so she has to do stuff to fix it. And then she's going around to like all the other cathedrals to like learn more about her powers and figure out what they're doing. And there's also, you know, like this evil queen character who like wants to destroy the world or something.
Of course.
We'll have to see how that plays out. And yeah, it's fun. There's this fun mechanic in combat, which I haven't really gotten the hang of yet, but Crispell can like turn enemies into past or future. So this has like impact on like status effects. So like if you get a character who's wearing metal wet and then send them into the future, they become rusted.
Oh, fun.
And that like weakens their defense. Or there's one character who can like plant things, like seeds, and then if you send that side of the screen into the future, they'll explode, and like all the enemies on that side of the screen will be poisoned or exploded, or you know, something to that effect. There's also some neat gimmicks with the bosses of like sometimes you would like destroy one side of a machine and then a repair drone would come out, but if you sent it to the past, like the repair drone wouldn't be there anymore or something like that. I don't remember quite how that worked, but I remember it being like, oh yeah, I got it when it clicked for me. So that was cool. You also have a couple of other party members. One of them's name is Christopher.
Goodness
and I'm
gracious.
Still waiting for how that plays into it. It has not been brought up yet. And I'm like, I know this is a significant game. Okay, your name's it's Chris Tales, it's Crispell, it's Christopher, it's spelled the same way. When are you gonna bring this up, game? So I'm still waiting for that. But yeah, it's pretty light. I like the base, like the concept. It's very pretty. So I am enjoying it still, even if it's sort of comfort foody JRPG story overall.
What are the odds that you kill God at the end?
Pretty high, I think. I think it's high.
Good. Cool.
Yeah.
What are the odds you
this
kill God
queen
at
character
the end of
has like
Chicory?
super time powers or whatever. So she could possibly be God. Or maybe there's like the god of time powers like over her or something. Seems likely. And then I finished Chicory, or I finished the main story. There seems to be endgame content, which honestly I probably will not do because I'm very bad at doing post-game content. Yeah, everything I said on last episode pretty much stands. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I liked the concept a lot. I felt like it could maybe be a little bit in your face, too much. And I wish there had been more encouragement for like coloring stuff in just as you walk around. Because like they showed me like my map at the end and it was like, wow, it's very white. Do
you not just like throw color everywhere? I mean, it helps to have Josh, whose only job is to color.
Yeah, see, I feel like that helps because for me it's like, you know, I'm going places, you know, I'm doing things. And I feel like if there was like someone whose just job was to color, maybe that would help a little bit. But no, I don't just color as I go around. Or I felt like I did. And yet somehow my map was still so white. They like filled it in one piece at a time. I was like, this is embarrassing.
A minimalist. Yeah.
What do you think of Chicory so far?
We're in, I think, chapter 4 now. I just got pizza with my sis. I really like that none of the food, like that they call the foods, they don't call them food names, because of course not, like that's their names, right? So I mean, I don't really love Holies, to be honest, but them like insisting on pizzas being slices, I'm like, yeah, good New Yorkers here. No sweet potato, Sweet Pota.
Sweet Pota.
Still having a fun time. My drawing, like, I consider myself in real life, look, I'm not no great artist, but I've taken some drawing classes, right? I paint.
You can draw villagers. Lots of villagers.
I draw villagers?
Yeah, the Animal Crossing series of characters
that's right.
you did.
Yes. I was like, villagers. Yes, I spent a ton of last year drawing Animal Crossing versions of characters that I watched on television. So I can draw round characters at the very least. But my art is so bad in this game. It is pretty bad.
The controller is not helpful.
It is not helpful. I really would like when I'm doing the drawings on the canvas, like in the art class, I wish I could have a slightly smaller cursor. Just like little small. Because like sometimes I want to narrow down my lines a little bit and it's very hard to do that well.
I wish you could turn off, like, especially when you're doing the art classes, like, how it starts to spread if you leave your cursor in one place for too long, you know? Because I would have that problem a lot where I was just, like, moving slowly because I was trying to do something and would just start, like, and I was like, no.
Not that.
Stop, not that.
I know, I was hoping, not that I've done a ton of drawing in Microsoft Paint, but I've done some drawing in Microsoft Paint. Not Microsoft Paint, I have an Apple paintbrush, but it's the same idea. And I really thought that some of that would translate to this game, but I think most of my success with Apple Paintbrush involves I'm willing to get to like the tiniest of cursors and clean things up really small when I'm excited about something that I'm working on. And that is not something you can do in this game. However, it is very fun to just throw color everywhere, even though we pretty much always end up with incredibly psychedelic and bright looking area. Like, we have not, I think, colored in one single area in a way that is tasteful.
Very good.
But I'm enjoying it so far. You know, do I need a game that's about imposter syndrome in my life? I don't know. I'm in the arts. I live with a grad student. So, like, are those things I need more of around me? Who could say, really?
I wish sometimes they show you, like, other art, you know, like the ones you copy or stuff that other people have done. And I wish it was, it does not look like they did it, like, in the game, you know,
no,
like
doesn't.
Using the same tools as the player. And I wish it looked like that, you know? Because it's just like, wow, look at this thing that I could never make in this game if I spent years. Which I feel like undercuts a little bit of, like, the don't feel imposter syndrome. I don't know.
I mean, you know, maybe you don't want it, though. Maybe some of the point is, well, I couldn't possibly do that. Right?
I guess so.
You don't, like, the flip side of that is if Chicory did a portrait of you and it was clearly done in game, but also it was just ridiculously good, maybe that would be worse.
Maybe that's true. You're right.
But I agree, though. I agree that it's like when they give me the thing to copy, I'm like, I can't do that. How did anyone do that? Why is my brush so PHAT fat?
Yeah.
But enjoying it, and it's continuing the local co-op crusade. Click Boyfriend is going to be away for a couple days this next week, and I'm like, what am I going to play? All the games I'm playing are like two-person games. So
man, you could go back to Yakuza finally.
I know. Well, I've been given permission to start. He was like, I don't care if you start Judgment without me. And I was like, okay. Maybe I will. Maybe it's time.
Oh, maybe we'll have a Judgment-heavy episode next 6 weeks.
Whenever I hear that, though, I think of the Yakuza 0 karaoke song, Breaking the Law.
I think that's kind of what Judgment is about.
Probably. Video game side note, we also spent a fair bit of time the past couple of days just spontaneously breaking into Saijima's lively interjections for the song Rouge of Love from Yakuza 5, which, if you haven't listened to, you really should. It's a joy. Anyway, Emma, go ahead. It's Ace Attorney time.
Yeah, so I played all of the great Ace Attorney Chronicles this 6 weeks.
All of it? Oh,
technically,
6 weeks. You're right. 6 weeks is the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Technically 2 games, but concepted as one originally, split into 2 for development reasons, and now put back together as one, and it sort of feels like one anyway. So Great Ace Attorney is a spin-off of the Phoenix Wright series. It's with the original creator of the Phoenix Wright series, which is Ace Attorney, but set sometime at the turn of the, when you say turn of the, do you do the last century or the future century?
This is embarrassing. I don't know.
Yeah, okay, 1900-ish. Like late 1800s, early 1900s, non-specified time. Where you play as Ryunosuke Naruhodo, Japanese man who stumbles into becoming a lawyer in Britain. It's great. It's ruined Ace Attorney for me, I think.
Why? Because it's better?
It's so much better. I don't know. I think the main thing is because it was concepted as one game, you've got 10 cases in which there's like an overarching plot and development happening. Whereas all of the Phoenix Wright games are sort of like, here's a game, here's a game, here's a game. The early ones, which, Shu Takumi worked on, as the creator of the series, are better about having like an overarching plot. But especially the new ones are just like, here's a 4th backstory for Apollo. Now, you didn't like his last backstory? Here's a new one. Does this make sense? Who cares? I don't care. But yeah, Great Ace Attorney is like, you follow Ryunosuke's development, across 10 cases and all these other characters who are, going through like a pre-planned plot across like an epic amount of time, so it feels fleshed out in a way that the Phoenix Wright games just kind of don't have the opportunity to do. So in some ways it's unfair. It also happens to have, the great detective Sherlock Sholmes.
Known worldwide.
Nobody, they say this several times in the game, no one could not know the name Sherlock Sholmes.
I'm glad they leaned into it. That's pretty funny.
There's even a joke in it where people mishear it as like Airlock Sholmes, like he's German.
Ah, nice.
Yeah. So they do really lean into the Sherlock Sholmes. And controversial opinion, I think it's funnier. If there's ever been a Sherlock Holmes who should be named Sherlock Sholmes, it is this one. He's just a funny man. He's just a silly, funny man. Yeah. I don't know really what to say about it. I saved it for last because I thought I would have a lot to talk about, but I don't know. Beyond just saying, like, it's so great. I love everyone so much. Sometimes they have full 3D models for everyone, and Ryunosuke walks back and forth sometimes, and that feels revolutionary. That's some revolutionary animation technology. He has legs.
Legs?
He has legs and they move.
My god.
So technically you could play these without playing Ace Attorney games, but in some ways I'd recommend playing the like original trilogy first, because I just think these ones are so good. Like, I don't know if it's just the period setting or the characters themselves or the fun animations they make with the 3D models, but something just clicks better. I mean, it's it's a team who had made, the original trilogy and then Apollo Justice and then Phoenix Wright versus Layton, Professor Layton, and then made these. So, it's a team that has been working on these games and honing their craft. Like, admitting that I have a rather dim memory of, like, the DS titles, I would think that, like, Apollo Justice is probably my favorite of the mainline Phoenix Wright games, because it has, like, an overarching plot in the middle of it that feels satisfactory. But this one just gets so much more time over 10 cases to, like, flesh things out. Yeah, so I really highly recommend it. It's the Emma Likes to Read edition of this episode. Also, some bangers, I will say. This song slaps, as Clickbait Boyfriend might say. Whenever Hairlock Shums comes on screen, his theme kicks in. You just have to listen to it for a second, because you're like, man, that slaps.
Well, I'm hyped. I was thinking, like, oh, maybe I'll play some Ace Attorney while he's away, but I was like, will he be upset to miss out on those bangers? Probably.
The original series has great ones too, but this one does benefit from, like, having instruments versus, like, the you know, chip electronic songs. Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Jam-packed episode here.
Yeah.
So, listeners, thanks for tuning in to another edition of Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
If you liked what you listened to, you should follow us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Talk This Podcast. You should also check out our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, check out the games that are in the hat for our main editions, and read the blog featuring long-running series Clickbait Boyfriend and Split Screen. And most importantly, if you enjoy the show, you really ought to subscribe so that you never miss an episode on Sundays. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Cast, anywhere you can find podcasts, you can find Talk This. And if you're subscribed, you certainly won't forget to download our episode next week on The Simpsons Hit and Run and new Pokemon Snap.
Wow, you did it.
It was coming up, I had a moment of panic where I could not remember. I was like, I know what these games are, and it's not in my head. It really reminded me of my acting days. I was like, oh my god, I don't know my line.
I pulled it up to cover for you, but you got it.
I still haven't decided which I will play.
You'll have to tune in and see, listeners.
Yeah. Get ready for the hitting Pokemon with your cars mashup. That is
literally what it's gonna be.
This is sure to be the mashup. Like, I cannot emphasize enough that the mashup is going to be Burnout, but with Pokemon.
Yeah.
Why isn't there a Pokemon kart racer? That's a missed opportunity.
Truly.
Game Freak, you listening?
Mm-hmm.
So that's it for this time, folks. Thanks, as always, for listening. Emma, send the people off with some words of wisdom. Or a pithy remark.
I got nothing. I got no pithy remark.
This week, I hope you do a lot of good reading on screens, and that your week has a nice overarching theme.